So I was just talking about that term whataboutery or whataboutism. I gave the one example of the 2002 Gujarat riots versus the 1994 Delhi riots, but there are many examples, and not only in India. So in fact, Noam Chomsky often comes up as somebody, and in a way he also, I think, in fact, commits this fallacy sometimes. But he's often accused of, look, how come you're only focusing on the colonial, imperialist activity of the US and never on other countries. So somebody might say, look, Chomsky, why should I listen to you talking about East Timor when you don't condemn the Russian invasion of Ukraine? Right. So maybe Chomsky is arguing. Suppose Chomsky is at some lecture and saying, "Oh, the U.S. has done this terribly wrong thing in supporting the massacre in East Timor." For people who watched the documentary and remember this, and somebody asks Chomsky in the Q&A, Chomsky, why should we listen to you in this case? After all, you're not credible because you didn't respond to this other act of aggression. Let's say in this case, Russia against Ukraine. There again, the key point there is there's a deflection. The argument, a person is making an argument about one particular topic, and you're deflecting. We'll see other forms of deflection. There's one form of deflection by pointing to some aspect of this person's character or pointing to the hypocrisy. That's the key part. That's the key element of that last. Of that the ad hominem to quoque. Okay, now let me move back to other forms of the argument. But any questions on what I just said? You guys can still hear me, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we're looking at arguments of the people. We've looked at arguments ad hominem. And Hurley has an interesting example of different ways in which well, actually, it's maybe worth actually even reading. Sujit, why don't you carry on? Let's read this. Keep in mind that from this passage onwards.
Yes, sir. Please share your screen.
Oh, I am sharing my screen.
No.
Yes, screen is visible.
Sujit, you can't see?
No, it's not visible for me.
What about others?
I think that we are able to
can
see.
Okay, so Sujit, maybe it's some problem at your end.
Okay, sir. Can I continue then?
Sorry?
Can I continue then?
Sure.
Yes, sir. I will try to rejoin.
Okay, hang on. Sujit, you figure it out?
No, I will try to rejoin till then.
Okay, then we can. We'll carry on with Hemant, then you can take on the next one.
Yeah, okay.
Keep in mind that the purpose of an ad hominem argument is to discredit another person's argument by placing its author in a bad light. Thus, for the fallacy to be committed, there must always be two arguers, at least implicitly. If it should turn out that the person being attacked is not an arguer, then the personal comments made by the attacker may well be relevant to the conclusion that it is drawn. In general, personal observations are relevant to conclusions about what kind of person someone is good, bad, stingy, trustworthy, and so forth, and whether a person has done something. Example: North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un has murdered political opponents and their entire families, and he has committed other crimes including extermination, enslavement, torture, and rape. Also, he has threatened US cities with nuclear annihilation. Kim Jong-un is therefore a thoroughly despicable and disgusting human being. Should I continue, sir? Then?
Yeah, just the sentence.
The conclusion is not that Kim Jong's argument is bad, but what Kim Jong himself is bad. Because
okay, just pause there. Just stop there. So that's the key. That's the key that one shouldn't. The takeaway from discussions about ad hominem arguments is not that one should not have ad hominem arguments. Sorry, it's not that one should not make personal comments or criticisms, but just that personal comments and criticisms may not be relevant to the content of what a person is arguing or not. That's an important takeaway. So let me move. I'm going to skip this point about accident and talk about again a phrase that I think some of you would have come across: the straw man. Sujit, are you back? Can you please speak? Yeah, Sumita.
This term came up in our lecture discussions only.
They have come up.
At one point.
What context?
Yeah.
Oh, in that charity principle of charity context.
Yes.
Yes, sir. I can see the screen now.
Okay, so why don't you read these two examples, the Mr. Goldberg example and the one at the bottom of the screen, the garment workers example.
Yeah, okay. Mr. Goldberg has argued against prayer in the public schools. Obviously, yeah. Mr. Goldberg advocates atheism, but atheism is what they should used to have in Russia. Atheism leads to the suppression of all religions and the replacement of God by omnipotent state. Is that what we want for this country? I hardly think so. Clearly, Mr. Goldberg's argument is nonsense.
Okay, and then look at the bottom one.
Yes, sir. The garment workers have signed a petition arguing for better ventilation on the work premises. Unfortunately, air conditioning is expensive. Air ducts would have to be run throughout the factory and a massive heat exchange unit installed on the roof. Also, the cost of operating such a system during the summer would be astronomical. In view of this consideration, the petition must be rejected.
Okay, so thoughts? What do you guys think on both of these arguments?
So I think it completely rejection of the principle of charity. We are not thinking about their arguments. Just I mean, we don't. The argument, the person who does these arguments doesn't thinks about what the other person has to say. Just keeping less importance to the argument.
So they're not really interested in what the other person is actually saying.
Yeah.
And in fact, it's the reverse, right? Sumila, you wanted to jump in?
Yes, I think they are taking advantage of a bit of vagueness in the other person's argument in order to attack it. Like in the second argument, they asked for better ventilation, but ventilation does not necessarily mean air conditioning or complete air conditioning. But that made it easier to attack.
That's right. So they pick up on one thing in what the other person says. And again, remember, this is a case where these arguments arise in the context of responding to other arguments. Right? Here there's an argument saying we should have better ventilation in the workplace. And what the straw man does is it distorts it provides a distorted extreme version of what the other person is saying, and then you attack that extreme version, and you leave the reader thinking, hey, the original what that person themselves was saying was mistaken. Right? In the same way here, Mr. Goldberg has argued against prayer in the public schools. Obviously, Mr. Goldberg advocates atheism, not at all. I mean, Mr. Goldberg might think it's very important to, religion has a very important place in life, but just not a place in places like public schools. Interesting. It's an interesting debate to be having right now in the context of the hijab controversy. Sujit, you had a
Yeah, I wanted to say that the arguer is manipulating the argument in the way that the person who takes decision thinks it badly and fears the outcome.
That's right. You're distorting the other person's. So the other person who's, if I say I may agree with Mr. Goldberg because I agree about this point, but I don't want to think I believe in atheism. So now because of this straw man argument, I may be, I don't want to be tarred, what they say, tarred with the same brush. I don't want to be called an atheist, even though I may agree with this much smaller point. So that's a very common form of argument, and as we've seen, we already discussed in the context of principle of charity. Let me skip for discussion, at least this point about missing the point, and just come to another argument, another form of fallacy, which is known as the red herring. And the red herring is essentially trying to divert the discussion from whatever point is being made to something that's not relevant to that point. So, Sujit, you want to just read out these two examples?
Yes, sir, I will continue.
Yeah.
Environmentalists are continually harping about the dangers of nuclear power. Unfortunately, electricity is dangerous no matter where it comes from. Every year, hundreds of people are electrocuted by accident. Since most of these accidents are caused by carelessness, they could be avoided if people would just exercise greater caution. There is a good deal of talk these days about the need to eliminate pesticides from our fruits and vegetables. But many of these foods are essential to our health. Carrots are an excellent source of vitamin A. Broccoli is rich in iron, and oranges and grapefruit have lots of vitamin C.
So, what do you think about these arguments? What's problematic about them?
Sir, I had a doubt in these two arguments. Like in the first argument, I do understand where the distortion of point B is being made, but second argument is, I mean, I can't really understand what the distorted argument becomes.
So, in the case of red herring, the issue is not distortion, but it's more like diversion.
Sorry, diversion. But in the second argument, the diversion is a bit too big to be called a diversion, I think.
It's too extreme, you think. Sujit, you want to go and jump in?
Yeah, that thing I want to say that if we want to eliminate the pesticides, how is it going to affect the? I mean, we are not going to eliminate the production of carrots or vegetables and fruits that are discussed here. We are just eliminating pesticides. But this argument takes it to some extreme point that if we eliminate pesticides, then we will also be eliminating some important fruits and vegetables.
So the red herring is the case where you're diverting the issue, and in this case you're diverting the issue to something that's so far out and extreme that if somebody doesn't notice it, then it's going to obviously lead them to to reject the the original claim. Um, and the red, a herring is a kind of fish. So the story is this kind of thing. The red herring is uh, if you're trying to distract or divert the attention from dogs who are hunting, then you pass this red herring across the trail, and now they get confused. So it's a kind of diversionary tactic. I think Shweta, your point was like so that it's such an egregious example that how would anyone actually be diverted? Was that the point you were trying to make?
Sorry.
No, your point with respect to this example, it sounded like they you find that it was such a big jump that you said, look, it's not
Yeah, it
hard to
felt
believe
like
that.
a totally different parallel approach, like totally different approach, not even relevant to the original argument.
So I mean, in many contexts, maybe it's very easy to see, but I imagine in some contexts, like again, in a TV debate or something, in real time. I mean, if you start, it's a good exercise to look at TV debates um, and think about, how often the subject is being changed and how often the job of a TV moderator is to make sure the subject doesn't get changed. And there's some very famous examples of, not in the Indian case, um, um, famous examples of TV interviewers who've become famous for not letting politicians to kind of, uh, to get off the hook um, by changing the subject, for instance. Um, let's look at one more example. This Professor Conway example. Sujit?
Yeah, yes, sir. Professor Conway complains about inadequate parking on our campus. But did you hear that Conway's eldest son, Jasper, was convicted a year ago of embezzlement? Jasper managed to steal $500,000 from the First National Bank before officials figured out what was going on. It's really important that bank officials be constantly vigilant. Okay, let's move on the next topic.
Right. So again, it's a form of the key point as far as um, the red herring is concerned is just the distraction, and the distraction didn't involve any distortion. In this case, it's just completely talking about um, a new topic, and one kind of tool to deal with this sort of distraction is simply to keep asking yourself, look, what's the relevance at this point? So this is why even the exercise of making sure that uh, you have a handle on what the person is arguing. What is the conclusion that uh, they want you to draw, and just always asking the question, look, well, how is this point you're making relevant to that particular conclusion? That's one sort of um, uh, maybe um, one sort of strategy for dealing with issues of red herring. I'm going to pause for 1 second because I'm going to try and find this very famous example that I had in mind of this red herring case. Let me see if I can post it. Let me see. I don't seem to have it. Let me see if I can find it online. Oh yeah, this is it. And it's going to very briefly show you this a clip from this.
Thank you. Now, Michael Howard is with us in the studio. Mr. Howard, do you condemn these stories about flowers and dinners and chocolates?
Yes, and they do not come from my campaign. Let me make that absolutely clear. And my understanding is that the journalist who wrote the story in the Daily Mail, to which you have referred, has confirmed that he did not speak to anyone in or near my campaign team before he wrote that article.
Clearly, they came from somebody sympathetic to you, though.
Well, not necessarily at all. I've no idea who they came from. If you look at the article as a whole, it's not a particularly sympathetic piece.
Do you agree that such stories are cheap and nasty and bring shame on anyone who spreads them?
I don't think we should be wasting anybody's time talking about stories like that. I don't think they should ever have appeared in the public prints, and I don't think we should waste our time talking about them. There are serious issues to be discussed since they've been raised about the dismissal of Derek Lewis as head of the prison service, a decision which I had to take in the light of an independent report, not mentioned in your introduction, which came to the conclusion that there were inexcusable weaknesses in the management of the prison service from top to bottom.
Why did you bawl out Anne Widdecombe for sending flowers in what she calls a Christian gesture to Mrs. Lewis?
I didn't, as she indeed has just confirmed.
She said you were extremely...
She said I didn't bawl her out.
She said she objected to the words "bawl out," but she said you were extremely agitated about it.
I thought it was an inappropriate thing to do, given that I had just dismissed Mrs. Lewis's husband. But I hope we're not going to spend this interview talking about flowers and things like that.
Mr. Howard, have you ever lied in any public statement?
Certainly not. I gave a very full account of the dismissal of Derek Lewis to the House of Commons Select Committee and to the House of Commons itself in a debate that took place. There can have been few decisions that have been subjected to more close and minute scrutiny in recent years than that decision. It was a decision that it was necessary for me to take after terrorists had escaped from Whitemore, other dangerous prisoners had escaped from Parkhurst, and an independent report had found that there were serious weaknesses in the management of the prison service from top to bottom.
Is there anything you would wish to change about your statement to the House of Commons or any other public statement you made about this matter?
No, nothing.
Not a word.
I gave a full account of what had happened in relation to my decision.
Right. Can you help us with this then? You stated in your statement that the leader of the opposition had said that I, that is you, personally told Mr. Lewis the governor of Parkhurst should be suspended immediately, that when Mr. Lewis objected, as it was an operational matter, I threatened to instruct him to do it. Derek Lewis says, Howard had certainly told me that the governor of Parkhurst should be suspended and had threatened to overrule me. Are you saying Mr. Lewis is lying?
I have given a full account of this, and the position is what I told the House of Commons. And let me tell you what the position is.
So you are saying that Mr. Lewis lied?
Let me tell you exactly what the position is. I was entitled to be consulted.
Yes.
And I was consulted. I was entitled to express an opinion. I did express an opinion. I was not entitled to instruct Derek Lewis what to do, and I did not instruct him what to do. And you will understand and recall that Mr. Marriott was not suspended. He was moved, and Derek Lewis told the Select Committee of the House of Commons that it was his opinion, Derek Lewis's opinion, that he should be moved immediately. That is what happened.
Mr. Lewis says I, that is Mr. Lewis, told him what we had decided about Marriott and why he, that is you, exploded. Simply moving the governor was politically unpalatable. It sounded indecisive. It would be seen as a fudge. If I did not change my mind and suspend Marriott, he would have to consider overruling me.
Mr. Marriott...
You can't both be right.
Mr. Marriott was not suspended. I was entitled to express my views. I was entitled to be consulted.
Did you threaten to overrule
I
him?
was not entitled to instruct Derek Lewis, and I did not instruct him. And
Did
the
you
truth
threaten
of,
to overrule
the
him?
truth of the matter is that Mr. Marriott was not suspended.
Did you
I did
threaten
not
to overrule him?
I did not overrule Derek
Did
Lewis.
you threaten to overrule him?
I took advice on what I could or could not do.
Did you threaten
and
to
I
overrule him,
acted
Mr. Howard?
scrupulously in accordance with that advice. I did not overrule Derek
Did you
Lewis.
threaten to overrule
Mr.
him?
Marriott was not suspended.
Did you threaten to overrule him?
I have accounted for my decision to dismiss Derek Lewis.
Did you threaten
in
to
great
overrule him?
detail before the House of Commons.
I note you're not answering the question whether you threatened to overrule him.
The important aspect of this, which it's very clear to bear in mind.
I'm sorry, I'm going to be
is
frightfully
this.
rude, but
yes, you
but
can.
I'm sorry. It's a
You
quite
can put,
straight
you
yes
can put
or
the
no.
question, and I
It's a
will
straight
give you.
yes or no
I will give you an
Did
answer.
you threaten to overrule him?
I discussed this matter with Derek Lewis. I gave him the.
I'll stop sharing that. So my memory of this is that yes, Sujit.
So, sir, one thing I found out is that he was insisting on only one thing. The reporter was repeatedly asking some question, but he was just insisting on one thing, that about his work, what he did, and what actually had happened. He wasn't actually responding to the questions reporter was asking.
Yeah, this is one question. And did you threaten to overrule him? So, by the way, this is like I mean, it's another interesting thing. This is, if my memory serves me, Michael Howard was like the equivalent of Amit Shah at that point, Home Minister of the UK. You have a journalist asking the same question 12 times, and you can see Michael Howard constantly just tend to deflect, say, no, the real question is this. No, this is what actually happened. This is, and good journalistic practice in this case is to to keep bringing the argument back to the point that's at issue. In my the reason I gave you that or showed you that clip was that maybe that's the skill that one needs in order to deal with the fallacies of relevance, is to always try and keep the point to this question of, okay, what's the evidence for this conclusion, or what is the reasoning that's been given in support of this claim. And the people committing the fallacies are going to be constantly saying, well, it's actually about this, or how come you're only talking about this and not about that thing, or you're only talking about this because of your self-interest. And the trick is to say, look, all of that is just kind of distraction, and the real question is just, are the reasons you're giving for the claim that you want to hold, are they good persuasive reasons or not? So that was the reason I brought it up. Okay, so I should stop. I guess I'll see some of you guys in tutorial tomorrow, and I'll share the material for next week. I think either later tonight or tomorrow. See you. Thank you.